Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the United Star. I'm Prashant Kothari, and I've got Alice with me from Alice Talks Football. Do check her channel out on YouTube, some wonderful content on it. She's obviously covered the transfer window extensively, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and about how the new signings will gel into their respective teams and which team has done well, which team has failed. And let's start off with the most obvious question. Which team has won the transfer window according to you, Alice? Who would you say has come out winners from it?
I think probably Man United probably have the best transfer in terms of we've signed three massive names. I know we didn't sign a CDM. I know we didn't manage to offload Pereira, Phil Jones, Lingard, who I think we did want to offload. But I'd say in terms of if you sign Ronaldo, Varane, Sancho, you probably win the transfer window. Maybe Villa and Crystal Palace for their standards had like a 10 out of 10 transfer window. But I still think we had probably the best transfer window this
Right.
summer.
But like a lot of people have come out and said that, I mean, we really didn't need Ronaldo and we needed a CDM. So what do you say to those people? And the fact that we didn't sign a CDM, can you really then say this transfer window is a 10 out of 10? Because essentially Sancho's transfer is last year's transfer, if we were to think.
Yeah. I mean, I give this transfer window a 7.5 out of 10 because we didn't sign a CDM and Sancho was last year's signing. And I think we could have got rid of Lee Grant, Mata, Jesse Lingard, Phil Jones. I just can't see them getting much game time. So yeah, for me, it's a 7.5 out of 10. Whereas I'd look at Villa, I'd look at maybe Crystal Palace, give them like a 9 out of 10 for their club standards. Because I do think a CDM was the most important transfer for me. It was CDM, Varane, and then a right winger. They were the three priorities in that order. I thought CDM was needed more than anything because it just completely changes the way you play. I think it's almost the most important position on the pitch because they can control the game. So I was very, very disappointed we didn't get a CDM. Having saying that, like if you're going to sacrifice not getting a CDM for any player, for me, it would be Ronaldo because he's still a top player. Even like he still got like 30 plus goals last season in a not brilliant Juventus side, a very struggling Juventus side. And I think the Ronaldo thing almost became necessary because if City got Ronaldo, that would have just hurt. And I think it almost became a necessary signing when he was available and he wanted us. So I think we should have been looking at Neves and Ndidi and players and Basuma way ahead of Ronaldo. But I think once Ronaldo became available, you could not go for him.
Right, absolutely. And a lot of people have, of course, come out and said that, Ronaldo sort of disorients the team because now everything is about him. He becomes the focal point, and that kind of reduces sort of the involvement of the other players. And do you think that will be at all an issue? Because we have seen that sometimes at Juventus, the president has come out and said that when it was Ronaldo on the pitch, it was to the detriment of other players. So do you think there's any truth in those things?
I don't think it should affect the players. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I think has implied like a good mentality in the players. So I do think a lot of our players have a good sort of mentality and attitude, whereas under Jose Mourinho, we questioned a lot of the players and what they felt about Man United. And I think everyone at Man United right now is here because they want to play for Man United and are happy. And I think it's, we've got other big names. We've got Pogba, Bruno. Obviously, maybe them not being the main man, they might feel a bit, but Bruno plays with Ronaldo at Portugal. He's not the main man. I think Pogba's obviously been brilliant this season, but I think Bruno's probably been our main man the last year. I don't think it's really going to affect the players. I think, if anything, it would probably give the players a boost because they're like, wow, we're playing with Ronaldo. Wow, this is our time to win a trophy.
Absolutely. And you said Aston Villa, of course, you mentioned them and you said that you'd rate their window about a 9.5 or 10. Obviously, they've got the likes of Leon Bailey, they've got Ashley Young, they've got Danny Ings. I mean, three solid players, Premier League level players, but they did lose sort of Jack Grealish in the process. So considering sort of the ins and outs of both, do you think they've actually added to the squad or is it just sort of replenishing what they lost with Grealish?
I mean, the reason I would say Villa probably had the best chance of winning in terms of if you look at what club expectation is, it was more that they got 100 million for Jack Grealish, which I thought was very good business in the outs. And Buendia, who they stole from Arsenal, Ings and Leon Bailey are three solid attackers that I think can, rehabilitate what Grealish does. And then I think they've got Tuanzebe, they've got Ashley Young just to strengthen that defence. So I think as a Villa person, when you sell Grealish, you're worried. But I think they've done enough Villa to replace Grealish and a little bit more.
Right. And obviously, Bundia was someone that a lot of clubs were tracking, and Arsenal, of course, were beaten to it. And that's what I want to talk about here is Arsenal, that a lot of Arsenal fans, there's a split among the Arsenal fans, basically, who some say that it's a great move that they're signing more young players. The others say that there are too many holes that these young players are not going to be able to come in and fill. What's your take on that? Because they have got some talent in terms of Odegaard, who's obviously a very good player, and obviously Ramsdale as well, in my opinion, is a good goalkeeper. But have they overspent almost on these young players?
I think they've definitely overspent. You know, they spent the most money this summer. Ben White and Ramsdale overpriced, especially considering Ramsdale got relegated. I think the money they spent, look, it's not been. I don't think their team is much stronger than last season. You know, because Odegaard was there last season. They've basically added Ben White and a couple of players that I don't think are really going to get game time. So I don't think they're much stronger than last season. However, saying that, I think when you're in a position where Arsenal are, where you haven't got Champions League for so long, where you're not in Europe, it's all about rebuilding. I think, you know, the first sort of transfer window we had under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, we had Dan James Maguire and Wan-Bissaka. Maguire and Wan-Bissaka were two players we did overpay for. With British, they weren't coming from big teams, they weren't big names, but they were players of youngish age to come and improve us. And I think that's the approach Arsenal are going with, because they know that they can't attract a Varane or Ronaldo at that club. You know, they can't even attract Buendia, you know. And I think they're just going, well, we need to build for, you know, 2 seasons' time. In 2 season transfer winners' time, Arsenal want to be attracting these big names. They want to be a top 4 club, because a lot of clubs like us were building to win the league. So we've got a different kind of transfer window range to Arsenal. I think they're building a team to try and get into Europe. And I think that they've actually took the right approach of it, because Ben White's young, Odegaard's young. They've already got Saka and Smith Rowe that are very, very good. Tavares, not Tavares, Lokonga's very, very young. And I think he could, you know, start ahead of Granit Xhaka soon. So I think actually Arsenal have done good business long term, but I think short term I can't see them having an instant impact.
Right. And I think that sort of obviously moving to the other North London club, I think Spurs' transfer window has been gone a little bit under the radar. At the end of it, if you look at it, they've managed to keep their sort of marquee marksman in terms of Harry Kane. They've got Christian Romero in, who's a perfectly good defender. They've got a couple of players from the Barcelona academy in. So
Yeah.
how would you rate their season? Because I think obviously they've got 3 wins from 3 games, and now they've got Harry Kane back. Romero will not started enough. He'll probably come in. Emerson Royale will probably come in. So how would you rate their season? Have they quietly done very well this year?
Yeah, I think they have, to be fair. I think they're in a position again like Arsenal where they couldn't really attract big names. Harry Kane wanted to go. They couldn't even get a manager for so long that you would think Spurs were in them up. But Christian Romero, obviously, because he was linked to Manchester United, I'm very familiar with the player. And like my options went for Varane, Koundé, Romero. I put him ahead of the likes of Pau Torres, Ben White, a lot of the other centre backs that we got linked to. And I think he's, you know, was the best, one of the best, if not the best centre back in Serie A last season. Young, one for the future. I think, you know, that's a very good deal there in terms of the centre back. They needed a centre back. And then they signed a couple, yeah, as you said, like young sort of players from Barcelona that they can mold into the team. Because I do think they actually underachieved last season. I do think they have a better squad than, you know, the West Ham that finished above them, and even Leicester finished above them. I think they're a team that, I think because Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Man City are very strong squads, they're a team that I would say is the 5th strongest team in the league.
Right, right. And you mentioned West Ham there, and I think that's another club that sort of has gone under the radar in terms of what they've done in the market. I think they have been, I think they've been very good as well, because they've signed a couple of decent players and they've managed to keep all their main players as well. Antonio is looking very sharp. Ben Rama is looking very sharp. So do you think they could sustain European football this season?
Yeah, like they've started very well, and I think they're a good squad. I just think they could drop off towards the end of the season when they start to tire. Like I could see them doing well, and then once they get to Christmas and they have all those extra games, they could start to tire depending on squad depth. You know, we've seen it with a lot of other teams. But again, they've got a good squad. They've had good transfer windows. Like I mean, like they haven't spent loads and loads of money, but there's players like Soucek that they bring in, and they always seem to buy the right player that does a good job. Like even Jesse Lingard came in and was like that there. So yeah, I think West Ham, you know, people are predicting them to really drop off, but I still think they'll be in the top half of the table. But I don't see them getting to Europe again.
Okay. And I mean, there's another team that's always lurking in the European spots, and I do think they will get into Europe, but will they get into that top 4? Is the real question, which is Leicester City. They've signed Patson Daka, obviously, who's a great great prospect, so to speak.
Mm.
And they've managed to keep Madison, they've managed to keep Ndidi, they've managed to keep those kind of players. But defensively, do you see some frailties coming in, or do you think Leicester will actually manage the top four?
Leicester, again, really, really good side, well managed club, great players, but they just always seem to just miss out on the final day of the season the last 2 years. And I just think now, you know, the strength in difference between, I think Chelsea, Liverpool, United, and City are that level ahead of Leicester. Whereas I think, last season, I think we were a level ahead of Leicester, but I think we're much stronger than we were last season. I think that Chelsea, obviously with Lampard, I think just Leicester could get top four because they're always up there and they're always a good team. But again, I think they'll be in the Europa League. I think they could maybe be in a top four race till the second 1, 2, 3 games left, but I can't see them sustaining top four again till final day of the season.
And obviously, the team they'll be fighting with for the top four will be Liverpool. And Liverpool have sort of made no real additions to their team. If there is an injury around the corner, Liverpool could really fall off. So, do you really think they could hold on to that fourth spot, especially since Salah and Mane will be gone for 2-3 games here and there? Is it possible that they do hold on without any additions to their team?
I think Jurgen Klopp for me is an absolutely world-class manager. I think he can achieve a lot. We know Liverpool went on that run to get top four last season as well. I look at them and I go, I think, last year they got top four with a lot of injury problems. And Van Dijk's injury was probably as bad as it could get for Liverpool, because I think the problem with Van Dijk's injury is it meant, because other centre-backs were getting injured, Fabinho then to go play centre-back, and then they were missing their key CDM in a sense. And I think for them, as long as Fabinho doesn't get injured, I think they'll be all right. I think it's about the midfielders, to be fair, at Liverpool. I think that's their weak spot. But still better midfield options than Man United, like Fabinho. But if something happens to Fabinho, then that's when I'd worry about Liverpool. But I think they'll still get top four.
I mean, also, if Salah and Mane get injured, they don't really have any replacements there. Obviously, Jota could play on either side, but obviously, if Salah gets injured, it's almost 25-30 goals gone there, so it's a big loss. But I do take your point that Liverpool do look stronger than Leicester at this point, but also they're in a very tricky and tough Champions League group, so I don't know how that might change things. So I think it'll be interesting to watch them. I just want to move a little bit to the 3 teams that have been promoted. From those, who do you think has done the best business? And in my opinion, Brentford will not get relegated, but Norwich definitely look like they're primed for relegation, and Watford will be in sort of that bottom half of the table space. So what do you take on those 3 teams? What is your take on them? And what do you make of the signings that they've made?
Obviously Norwich, they always get promoted, get relegated, get promoted, get relegated. It's classic Norwich. But I actually think Norwich almost had one of the best transfer windows. I think, unfortunately, they managed not to hold on to Buendia, but they got a decent amount of money for him. They brought Billy Gilmore in. They brought Brandon Williams in on loan. They brought quite a few youngsters in. And I could see them, I know they started the season badly, but they've had, Liverpool and Man City first 2 games of the season. Like, you can't really blame them for being on 0 points, but I think they could surprise us, Norwich. I think they'll still get relegated, but I think they could actually not finish rock bottom like everyone thinks. But I do think they've brought some good signings.
Right. And what about Brentford? I think Brentford in the first 3 games have been absolutely brilliant. Obviously undefeated as of yet. But do you think they can actually make a dent into the top half of the sort of table, or is that not something that they will be able to manage?
I don't know, because it's quite hard. I think the thing about Brentford is they almost remind me of Sheffield United 2 years ago, where they almost kept the core of their squad when they got promoted. I think, we saw Villa get promoted and then they splashed out 150 million quid and they only just didn't get relegated 2 seasons ago. Whereas, Sheffield United, which were a much worse team than Villa, they didn't splash out that much cash. They kept the core of their squad and they ended up getting, staying up and I think coming like 10th or 9th or something. And you could see that with Brentford, if they can keep some momentum and stuff. I think for Brentford, though, it would all be about momentum. I think they look good. They look like a decent team, but I think they would probably, I think at this rate, I could see them finishing 13th place.
Right, absolutely. And before we wrap this up, there are just 2 more teams I want to talk about. One is Everton. Obviously, they've got Damari Gray from Leicester, and he's looked fairly good in the first 3 games. He's always had that little bit of spark about him, but he's never really lived up to his potential over an entire season. But they haven't really signed anyone else. Obviously, they've managed to keep on to DCL, Richarlison, Doucouré, Elan, everyone they've managed to keep on to, Luca Dean even. So, do you think under Rafa Benitez, there is a real chance of them cracking that top six? Because Benitez, obviously, in my view, is a much more tactically astute manager than Carlo. So, do you think it's possible, or a couple of losses here and there, and the Everton fans could just turn on Benitez very quickly?
Yeah, Benitez is a good manager. We obviously know that. I think Everton had probably the most disappointing transfer window. Rondon on deadline day and Damari Gray, who is a bit of a Leicester reject. I wouldn't be happy as a Liverpool fan. The fact they've managed to keep key players, I think they do have a good squad. I think, James, Allen, Doucouré, very, very solid field options. Digne is very, very good. I think not Holgate, the other one. Ben Godfrey's been very, very impressive. Pickford's good in the Euros, so he might have that confidence boost. I think DCL, Richarlison. I think, you know what, like Everton have the squad to possibly get top six. You know, if you think that West Ham got top six last season, you think Everton probably have the squad. I think Everton actually have a better squad than Arsenal and a better manager. And I think, I think I think Everton could possibly get top six. But again, for me, the fifth and sixth is Spurs and Leicester. I think they're just ahead of Everton. I think they could maybe get seventh, but I don't think top six.
Right, absolutely. And one final team that I want to talk about is obviously Leeds. Interesting transfer window, you'd say. Dan James, whom they've been pursuing forever. Obviously, I think that's a great deal for United as well to get him offloaded finally. And I think it's a great move for all parties because that kind of system will really suit James as well in order to, for his work rate and for his ability to just run around the entire day. That's what Bielsa wants, and he's got it in him. They've also got Junior Firpo, who I think he's picked up some sort of a long-term injury as well. So do you think Leeds can sustain that top 10 sort of performance this season? Because they haven't made any big ticket signings that their fans were expecting, but they did manage to hold on to Calvin Phillips and Rafinha. And Jack Harrison is there on a permanent now.
Yeah, I think Leeds, I can't see them getting relegated. I think solid mid-table for them. Again, similar kind of finish to last year, added some decent names. Obviously, Daniel James, I think, would be good for them, adds a bit more depth in attack. I just think Leeds will just have a bang average mid-table season. I don't think their fans will be disappointed.
Right. And obviously, as a sort of United sort of supporters, we're looking forward to see Ronaldo play. But apart from Cristiano Ronaldo, which players sort of are you excited to see in the Premier League and to see how they go this year?
I mean, Varane is obviously, we've already seen him once. He's a player that I think we needed more than anything as a United perspective. I'm very, very excited to see him. I'd quite like to see the Sumer guy that Leicester signed because obviously he was a player that Man United were linked to once. And I want to see, is he a player that we potentially missed out on? It was Christian Romero from Spurs, again, another player United was linked to. And then obviously the loanies, Brandon Williams at Norwich. I want to see how he does. Axel Tuanzebe at Villa. Quite excited to see Leon Bailey, actually, a player that was quite fancy in the Bundesliga. Again, we've been linked to him. So players that Man United have been linked to, I'm excited to see. And obviously Man United loanies, I'm quite excited to see. So yeah.
I'm actually excited to see sort of the second coming of Romelu Lukaku, as it were. He looks like a sort of different player. He looks a lot more mature. His game seems to be different. He looks different. He seems to be a lot more fitter as well. So yeah. I think that could be very interesting if he can get on a run. Chelsea are really got the squad to challenge on all fronts, but you never know with these things. But the other thing that I think is very interesting, and I want your opinion on this, is that we've got almost 4 top quality goal scorers in terms of Ronaldo, Harry Kane, obviously Romelu Lukaku, Mohamed Salah. You could even include Jamie Vardy. The way he started the season, you'd never discount Vardy. Who do you think could win the Golden Boot potentially with these 5 sort of goal scorers in there? And who would you put your money on?
Oh, the thing is, obviously Ronaldo's a top goal scorer. He's obviously a couple of games behind the others because he's joined late, and it's always safe to put money on Ronaldo. However, saying that, United, we don't create lots of chances, so I wouldn't. So I'd probably go with Salah because I think he takes penalties for Liverpool. He's always in the Golden Boot race. I think Salah for me because Kane normally has injury problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I say Salah probably.
Do you also see some performance issues with Kane this season, with his mind probably not being there, or do you see sort of him just coming out, putting all that behind, and just playing the way he does?
I think Kane's quite a professional player. We do often see Kane start seasons quite slowly. There's a thing where he hasn't scored in August there for like 3 or 4 seasons. But I could see Kane once the season gets going. He's Harry Kane. I think he'll be fine. I think, he could start slow, but I think he'll be all right.
Right, absolutely. And just your final sort of prediction on looking at everything, looking at the first 3 games, looking at how the transfers have gone. Who do you think? I'm not going to ask you who's going to be in the sort of title race because it's fairly obvious it's going to be a 3-way sort of battle. But who do you think is going to get relegated? I think I think the bottom end of the table might get very muddled up and it could be much closer. I don't think there's going to be a team like Sheffield or Norwich in the last 2 seasons who sort of completely fell off. So what's your view on that?
I think Norwich, I think they just always get relegated. I think maybe Watford could. I think, they've looked all right, to be fair, so far. And then I think it'll be... The thing is, I think Crystal Palace had a really good transfer window, but I don't know much about Vieira as a manager. I think Newcastle could be down there. I think Burnley could be down there. I think Southampton could be down there. I think Norwich, I'm going to go Burnley. And then it's between Watford or Southampton for that sort of third one. I think they will be the 3.
Right, absolutely. I almost agree with you. I think Watford will stay up. I think it'll be Norwich, Burnley and Southampton for me, but you never knew. Newcastle is very close to being there as well. So thank you so much, Alice. Please do check out her channel as well, Alice Talks Football. The link's obviously tagged in the description and everything. Please do subscribe to our channel as well. A lot of content coming your way in terms of Manchester United, in terms of football. Champions League's back next week, and it's a very exciting time. So thank you so much, Alice, for joining us. Subscribe to both our channels and keep following us. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.